Have you ever wondered about the most mysterious beings mentioned in the Bible? Who were the Nephilim? Were they real giants? Where did they come from, and what happened to them? Today, we're going to dive deep into one of Scripture's greatest puzzles, looking exclusively at what the King James Version of the Bible tells us. Let's start with Genesis chapter 6 verse 4. It says, "There were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men, and they bare children to them, the same became mighty men which were of old, men of renown." The word giants here is translated from the Hebrew word Nephilim. This single verse opens up a world of questions about these beings who lived before the great flood, and as the verse says, possibly even after. So what does the word Nephilim actually mean? In Hebrew it carries connotations of the fallen ones or mighty ones. The King James translation chose giants, which gives us a powerful visual. Genesis 6 verse 4 goes on to describe them as mighty men which were of old, men of renown. This tells us they weren't just ordinary people. They were famous, they were powerful, and they were feared. They left a massive mark on the ancient world. Now, let's get to the heart of the mystery, their origin. Genesis 6 verse 2 says, "The sons of God saw the daughters of men that they were fair, and they took them wives of all which they chose." So, we have two distinct groups, the sons of God and the daughters of men. Their union produced children, and those children were the Nephilim. The identity of these sons of God is central to understanding who the Nephilim were. There are two main views on who the sons of God were. One view suggests they were from a godly human lineage, specifically the descendants of Seth. Another, more debated view, is that they were fallen angels. Let's look at what other parts of the Bible say. In the book of Job, chapter 1 verse 6, it says, "Now there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan came also among them." Here the term sons of God clearly refers to angelic beings. If this is the same group mentioned in Genesis, it means the Nephilim had a supernatural origin, a hybrid nature that was part human, part angelic. This would certainly explain their extraordinary status. The Bible is very clear that these beings were giants. When the Israelite spies scouted the land of Canaan, they came back terrified. In Numbers chapter 13 verse 33, they reported, "And there we saw the giants, the sons of Anak, which come of the giants, and we were in our own sight as grasshoppers, and so we were in their sight." Imagine feeling like a grasshopper next to someone. This wasn't just a slight height difference. It proves they were physically massive, towering over normal men. This brings us to the genetic mystery. The union described in Genesis resulted in a mixed offspring. These weren't just tall humans, there was something different, a corruption of the human line. They possessed unusual size, incredible strength, and immense power. This combination of supernatural heritage and physical might is what made them so feared, and it's also a crucial reason why God decided to judge the entire earth. The world had become completely corrupt. Genesis 6 verse 5 gives us a chilling account, "And God saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually." Something had gone terribly, fundamentally wrong with humanity. The very genetic code of mankind was being corrupted. Amidst all this chaos, only one man and his family remained pure. Genesis 6 verse 9 tells us, "Noah was a just man and perfect in his generations." The phrase "perfect in his generations" can be interpreted to mean his lineage. His genealogy was uncorrupted by this Nephilim interference. Now, here's a detail many people miss. Did the Nephilim exist after the flood? Let's go back to Genesis 6 verse 4. It says, "There were giants in the earth in those days." And also after that. That little phrase, "and also after that," is huge. It strongly implies that giants reappeared even after the flood wiped the world clean. How is this possible? The Bible doesn't explicitly say, but it does give us examples of giants long after Noah. The most famous example is Goliath. In 1 Samuel chapter 17 verse 4, he's described as a champion from Gath, whose height was 6 cubits and a span. That's over 9 feet tall. He was a massive warrior who terrified the entire army of Israel. But he wasn't the only one. The Bible mentions other giants too. For instance, Og, the king of Bashan. Deuteronomy chapter 3 verse 11 describes his bed. His bedstead was a bedstead of iron. 9 cubits was the length thereof, and 4 cubits the breadth of it. That's a bed about 13.5 feet long and 6 feet wide. Clearly this was a man of enormous size. Later in 2 Samuel, we read about the giants that David and his mighty men fought and killed, who were also descendants of the giants in Gath. So why would this happen? Why would there be an attempt to corrupt the human race? To answer that, we have to go back to the very beginning, to Genesis chapter 3, verse 15. God gives the first promise of a savior, who would be born from the seed of the woman and would crush the serpent's head. This was a direct prophecy about the Messiah. From that moment on, it seems Satan launched a strategic campaign to prevent this from ever happening. If he could corrupt the human lineage, if he could contaminate humanity's very DNA, then a pure human savior could not be born. It was, in a sense, a genetic war for the future of humanity, but God's plan cannot be stopped. He intervened decisively by sending the flood. This was not just a punishment for sin, but an act of purification. It cleansed the earth of the Nephilim and the widespread corruption they represented. By saving Noah and his family, God preserved a pure human line through which his promise of a savior could eventually be fulfilled. He protected his plan and his people. So were the Nephilim demons. The Bible describes them as physical beings. They weren't just spirits or ghosts. They had bodies. They ate. They lived. They fought. And they died. That were a physical manifestation of a spiritual rebellion, a tangible threat on the earth. And this explains why they were called men of renown. They weren't just famous. They were infamous. They were warriors, kings, and rulers who dominated the pre-flood world through fear and power. They built kingdoms and left behind legends that have echoed through human history in the myths and stories of almost every ancient culture. What can we learn from this today? The story of the Nephilim teaches us powerful lessons. It shows that God judges corruption, that he protects the purity of his creation, and above all, that he always keeps his promises. No matter how dark things get, God's plan will prevail. He will preserve his people. Finally, and this is incredibly important for us now, Jesus himself referenced this time period. In Matthew chapter 24, he said, "But as the days of Noah were, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be." He warned that the conditions of the end times would mirror the conditions in the days before the flood. This makes studying the Nephilim not just a historical curiosity, but something with profound relevance for our own future. So, to summarize, the Nephilim were powerful giants, the offspring of a forbidden union before the flood, and possibly after. They represented a corruption of humanity that prompted God's judgment in the flood. But through it all, God preserved a pure line through Noah, ensuring his plan of salvation for all of us. This ancient mystery serves as a powerful reminder of the spiritual battle around us and the faithfulness of God. Thank you for joining me on this deep dive. If you found this study interesting, please like, share, and subscribe for more content exploring the depths of the Bible. See you next time.